Reddit by Reddit recap. Redditors who made a lot of money by sheer randomness. What's your story? I once got a message from Reddit admin. It asked if I wanted to do some contract work in my free time. Over the course of a few months, I made like $5 for browsing subreddits and categorizing them by topic and age rating. I didn't get to pick the subreddits I wanted to view though. They'd send me a list of a few hundred subreddits, and I'd have to spend about 10-15 minutes on each sub. I'd check for certain things, fill out a Google Sheets form, and move on to the next sub. When I finished a full list, I'd email them to get a new one. It was a pretty sweet gig. I was a substitute teacher and a tutor at the time, so anytime a kid or a teacher cancelled on me, I'd do my Reddit thing. Plus, it was an easy job to do while I was homesick, or waiting for the repair guy to come to my house. Because I had no set hours, I just worked whenever I felt like it. I found $3,600 in a food takeout box in the middle of a giant field. I live in a rich area and lot of drug deals happen, so it's possible I stole multiple thousands of dollars from a drug dealer on accident. My grandma decided to try a slot machine once as a joke and won $300 first try. I work in pokey rooms. An elderly man once came in and asked me to teach him how to play. I did so, and about 20 minutes in he won the grand jackpot of around $9,000 odd. I was overjoyed for him and got really excited. Then for months I watched him come in regularly and just lose. I felt so bad that I had taught him how to play and that he won so big to start with because his bar was then set so high he could never live up to it again. Poor man won himself a gambling addiction. Not money, but I was gifted a brand new $1,200 laptop for free once, just because I posted about needing a new one on a forum. My great aunt and godmother was a lesbian. Her partner, my auntie Kitty, had been with her since the 1950s, when my godmother moved to New York City to work for her as a magazine photographer. Auntie Kitty was disowned by her family when it came out she was with a woman. My godmother died when I was 12 and left my auntie Kitty everything in her will, which made things strained with my dad's family, though my dad and one of his brothers still talked to her. I moved to New York at 18 for school and, knowing no one else in the city, we became close. She was thrilled that I wanted to have a relationship with her and spend time with her and didn't hesitate to think of her as my aunt, even though she technically wasn't. She was legit the greatest. And we spent holidays together and she would come to things I worked on and I knew all her friends and she knew mine. I basically spent a decade with her being like another grandmother to me. As she got older, she'd repeatedly remind me I was the executor of her will, that I was to follow it to a T, and none of her family was to get anything. I got the bulk, my dad and uncle got some, and my sister and my nieces a little. I knew the woman had money. She had a vacation home in the Carolinas and a brownstone in Nick, but since they were bought in the 70s, I figured outside of real estate, there wasn't much. I was very wrong, and inherited enough that potentially I wouldn't have to work ever again if I didn't feel like it. The summer after my freshman year in college, I was walking my little 20-pound dog on a street near my house. A neighbor lady was walking her two dogs who were a husky and some other similar sized dog. The husky attacked my dog and in the process I got some teeth marks on my wrist. Since the neighbor's dog started it and the owner obviously couldn't control it, I wanted them to pay the vet fees for my dog, which was under $500. The guy ended up being an A about it and my roommate's dad was a lawyer, so about a year and a half later I ended up with about $20K. When I was 17, about to turn 18, my mom told me to open a bank account because I was going to get around $500-600 from my dad. Opened the bank account, signed the papers she needed me to, and got a whopping $15,400 deposited into my bank at 18 years old. 2 years ago, 22 at this point, come to find out he gets a huge settlement for a car accident, I think, and get another $15K disbursed over 2.5 years. IDK if it was back child support or what, but I was really blessed. In the 90s I fostered a dog for some friends who were leaving town and left the dog with me. This dog immediately made an impression upon me, and even though I really didn't want a pet at the time, he was such an amazing dog. He convinced me otherwise. He was super smart, half black lab, half pit bull, I called him Wisdom because he was so smart. Fast forward a few years, I used him as a mascot for a recording studio I set up. I registered the domain name wisdom.com. My dog passed away several years later and I was heartbroken and depressed for many years. I maintained the domain name even though I didn't really have any projects associated with it. Over the years people made offers on the domain name but I always passed. The domain was a homage to my long lost best friend. Then in 2000 with the .com boom, there was renewed interest in domains and IPOs. I had a few groups bugging me for the domain name and kept increasing their offers. Eventually the numbers got into the life-changing areas of money, and I couldn't ignore them. I originally secured the wisdom.com domain name for nothing. In the early days of the internet, it didn't cost any money to register a domain name. You just had to fill out the right forms. I actually would never have to pay any domain renewal fees if it wasn't for a sysadmin that made changes to the domain and accepted new terms of service that forced me to have to pay renewal fees. Otherwise, the $475,000 I was ultimately offered in cash would have been pure profit. But instead my cost was a few $100s over the year. Still a significant windfall that gave me the opportunity to take that money and create another cool community of wonderful people. I continue to be in awe that my little dog, Wisdom, had the ability to bestow such an amazing gift upon me so many years later. And I'm determined to use that gift to help others. I took the money to create a special space that is a makerspace and club to help others. I was the victim of housing discrimination and the morons put it in writing. They literally sent me an email explaining they wouldn't rent to me because of illegal discrimination reason. Had they just not sent the email, they would have been fine. Nobody would have known they'd rejected my application for a bad reason. It's okay to reject applications for a wide variety of reasons. If they'd chosen a fake one, or even given no explanation at all, they wouldn't have found themselves in legal trouble. I made a complaint to my state and the state assigned a free lawyer to handle it. I didn't even know they'd do that. Anyway, the people kept lying and saying I was making shit up. They insulted my character in a wide variety of ways that went way beyond the issue at hand. Think stuff like claiming I was faking. Reason they discriminated in the first place. So how could they discriminate against something I was faking? It was just ridiculous. In the end, I wound up with a decent sized check. Again, when I reported them I thought I'd never learned the result of what the state would decide to do. I was just reporting a broken law. But the best part was that the lawyer asked me if I wanted them to have to take an anti-discrimination class because, if I did, the state would include that in the punitive measures. I did. The class was 2 hours away from them in the constant traffic of our area, and I liked imagining them having to sit there in some ugly depressing room while being educated about why they were shy people and needed to stop being shy. Normal Reddit reply of not me but my friend's dad's friend. He decided to open an ice business. Hey, everyone need ice. He bought an old warehouse in the ghetto because it was cheap. Government decided to redo the on-ramps to the bridge and needed to buy like 1/3 RD of his parking lot. Maybe say 20 parking spots worth. He didn't care. He had a staff of like 4. Never used more than that. I never heard exact numbers but I did hear he got more for those spots than he paid for the property. Worked a job for a long time. Got hurt on the job. They instead of helping me terminated me. Got a lawyer. A year later got $260K for the whole fiasco. Not sure if this counts but that's my story. I started an Amazon private label business on a whim in 2015. I made about 25% of the sale in profit after product, shipping, and advertising costs. Sales doubled every month for 6 months. June $4K, July $8K, August $18K, September $40K, October $84K, November $175K, December $362K. I didn't know what to do. I quit my job in January to focus on growing the business, but my time was spent mostly trying to fend off competition, copying my listing and posting fraudulent reviews and then lowering my price in the race to the bottom. It went well for a few years, but I never made as much as I made that first December. Lesson learned: arbitrage isn't a long-term business. I won $5,000 playing bingo on a cruise. I have only been on one cruise, and it was the only time I have played bingo in my life. I have retired from both. Playing blackjack while drunk in Reno. I had $300 to waste at the $5 table, got lots of free watered down drinks while I was playing, so I wasn't paying attention. I have a rule. 2 piles. One of cash I can waste and another of money I won. I was there for about 3 hours before I realized I wasn't out of betting money and the dealer had changed 4 times. Won $4K at that table. Paid for the trip and a bit left over. I haven't been to a casino since, but I doubt I'd have that kind of luck again. I used to play Minesweeper a lot. Some website showed up where you could play in little tournaments. I started with $20 and made over $1,000. My wife's aunt died. She had been institutionalized her whole life and neither of us had ever even met her. We kind of forgot about it for a few months until my wife's uncle emailed her and said she was going to be getting some money. We were like, oh, okay, that's kinda weird, but not complaining. Then my wife got a phone call from the uncle one evening. I heard a lot of ums, okays, and geez, wows. Turned out we were getting over $300,000. We were both grinding away making $15 an hour and barely making rent every month. And then boom, out of nowhere. That ended up being the difference between having a house and not having a house. Being able to start a family and not being able to start a family. And having a retirement fund vs just hoping not to get evicted every month. Best comment of the day. You have to have 1. Rich relatives 2. Be the favorite relative 3. Have a birthday party 4. Cash out. Worked for me.